There's a certain silence that only comes after midnight, when the world outside has finally gone to sleep, and the only sound is the faint hum of electricity running through the walls. It was in this silence that Julia first noticed it. The thing in the mirror. Julia had just moved into her new apartment. It was cheap, almost too cheap, but she didn't question it. It was an old building with creaky floors and walls that seemed to whisper in the dark. The mirror in the bathroom was ancient, the silver backing faded in places, giving it a cloudy, almost ethereal quality. At first, it was just a flicker, a shadow that didn't belong, darting just out of sight whenever she caught her reflection. She chalked it up to her imagination, the stress of moving, maybe a trick of the dim light, but it kept happening. One night, unable to sleep, Julia found herself in front of the bathroom mirror, staring into her own tired eyes. That's when she saw it. Really saw it. The shadow was no longer a fleeting thing. It was there, standing behind her, its form vague and featureless, more a void than a being. Her breath caught in her throat, but she couldn't look away. The shadow didn't move. It just stood there as if waiting. Julia's heart pounded in her chest, but some morbid curiosity kept her rooted on the spot. She reached out trembling hands towards the mirror as if to touch it, to see if it was real. But before her fingers could make contact, the shadow shifted. It leaned closer, and though it had no face, she felt its gaze pierce through her. Her reflection, once identical, began to change. The eyes in the mirror widened, filling with terror. But it wasn't her terror, it was the shadow's. The reflection's mouth opened in a silent scream, a plea for help that Julia couldn't hear but could feel deep in her bones. Then, the shadow moved. It slid over her reflection, darkening it, consuming it until nothing was left but blackness. Julia stumbled back, gasping for air, her hand over her mouth to stifle the scream that threatened to escape. She didn't sleep that night, or the next. She avoided the mirror, but every time she passed by, she could feel it there, lurking, waiting. She could feel it watching her. It was on the third night that the silence was broken. A soft, rhythmic tapping came from the bathroom. Julia, against every instinct, crept towards the door. The tapping grew louder, more insistent as she got closer. She pushed the door open and the mirror was shattered. The pieces lay scattered across the floor, but in each shard she saw it. The shadow, staring back at her from every angle, multiplied. It was no longer confined to a mirror. Julia tried to leave, but every reflection she passed, every window, every screen, every polished surface held to the shadow. It followed her, closer and closer, until it was no longer just in the reflections. She could feel it behind her, its breath on the back of her neck, its fingers brushing her skin. No one ever found Julia. When they broke into her apartment, all they found were mirrors, hundreds of them, all intact, all reflecting an empty room. But if you look closely in the deepest, darkest corner of those mirrors, you might see it. A shadow, watching, waiting for someone to notice. And if you do so, it's already too late. Would you dare to look deeper into your mirrors?